Hi everyone, welcome to the fourth week of the course. I hope you already enjoyed the course so far. In this week, we mostly talk about the technologies that support different processes of knowledge management. And this is a more introductory video to the content that we have for this week for session 5, and also a connection to the guest lecture which is related to session 6. So back to the system of different knowledge management processes that we discussed. We already covered almost most of these aspects. We discussed about the knowledge base of the organizations. This knowledge base can be accumulated by acquisition of the knowledge that is coming from the outside. It can be filled up by the creation of the new knowledge, and this knowledge, as we discussed, needs to be properly codified, coordinated, shared, and at the end put into the practice and used. In the rest of this course, we will get more into the parts that are not yet fully covered, the knowledge use, basically how we put knowledge into the practice, and at the end we come back to the idea of unlearning. When some areas of knowledge are not related anymore to the organization, are obsolete, how organizations can not rely on them when they are working with the different knowledge domains. But this is basically the overall picture. The question that has been always with this knowledge management literature and practice is how we can use different technologies in order to support these mechanisms. Of course, over the last 2 decades, or maybe now even more, many different digital technologies have been produced and designed. Some of them are general systems, and some of them are very much specific to the knowledge management. And they are basically trying to support organizations on one or multiple of these processes. If you go through the content of this week, you have one literature review paper by Alavi and Leidner that talks about the different knowledge management systems. It offers you a nice overview of the different types of the knowledge, different philosophies of the knowledge management, and then take you into the different processes or types of the systems that support knowledge management. And basically they talk about the systems that supports the creation of the knowledge, the systems that support the codification and storage, the ones that support the sharing of the knowledge, and the ones that are more into the application of the knowledge. So there are many examples of these systems. Some of them are typical systems, some of them are very concrete examples. So I do recommend you to check out this paper very carefully, and also look for the examples online so you can see different examples of these systems. Then you have a more in-depth paper on the social media and the way social media, as one of the very popular and most recent systems, supports the interactions between the knowers, those people who have knowledge, and partly also enables them to share knowledge. For the social media, you see that the paper that you look at tries to take it a little bit away from a very, let's say, conventional or traditional way of looking at the social media, and tries to highlight new aspects and new affordances of social media in relation to supporting knowledge management. And in that sense, it has a few interesting aspects or ideas about social media. For instance, it's not that content is produced before. Social media is only a way to share and exchange them. In fact, knowledge is very much created in the social media, and because of certain features and functionalities, knowledge can be created. Otherwise, that knowledge would not be actually created in the first place. The way we see social media these days is taking organizations far beyond their formal boundaries, and it actually connects them to a very broad range of the audience. Many of them may not be actually officially connected to the organization. It offers a lot of public visibility to the knowledge, and particularly to those who were often invisible without having a social media in place. Another interesting aspect of this paper is the sort of attention that the authors pay to both the knowledge that is produced and exchanged on the social media, in addition to the knowers and the process of knowing those who the activities that they do, the tasks that are performed on the social media. Of course, the way we see these days social media is supporting knowledge exchange and knowledge interaction is more decentralized, and it's very much inherent to the idea of the social media. Something that the authors discuss is that if before knowledge creation and knowledge sharing was something occasional, intermittent, now with the help of social media it is almost constant all the time. It's sort of non-stop happens. And the last maybe interesting point here is that social media is not like some of the traditional knowledge management systems that they are mostly a storage of the knowledge. No, they are more live communities of knowledge related actors, those who are experts, those who are novices, those who are actually brokers, and with many different roles they are participating in this online community. So read the paper carefully, pay attention to these differences, and especially the paper talks about 4 interesting affordances of the social media in supporting the knowledge sharing. One of the other types of systems that I think are important to discuss in relation to knowledge management are expert systems. Of course, here you have the Davenport and Prusok chapter where they talk about the expert systems. And when you read that chapter, take into account that this chapter represents the rule-based types of expert systems, which are the ones that were popular in late 80s and early 90s. But then the idea of these rule-based expert systems was that there are some people who are expert in performing certain tasks. For instance, they are expert pilots, they are expert doctors, they are expert lawyers. And then the idea was that through a concept which is called knowledge engineering and a series of techniques such as interviews, modeling, discussion, these people who had this expertise were interviewed, were asked to explicate the way they think about the problem and the way they analyze it and the way they reason through the different options and at the end make the decisions. So in a way, the idea of the expert systems was that we can create certain rule-based algorithms. So to think about that, you can simply think about if-then type of instructions. And then through that, they would model the process of thinking and reasoning of the experts. And if that can be modeled through the rule-based algorithms, and those algorithms would be implemented in a kind of digital system, then this system can be given to non-experts, and non-experts can be guided by these systems as if the expert is sitting next to them and is guiding them. Just very simple example. If you look at the literature, you see that in late 80s, early 90s, there were many computer-aided diagnosis systems known as CAD systems. Not the CAD for the architecture. This is a CAD which represents the computer-aided diagnosis. And the idea of the CAD systems were that they were asking doctors, how do you diagnose certain disease? And they were trying to sort of define certain questions and answers through which the user was naturally guided from the symptoms to the disease. For instance, does the patient have fever? Yes or no? Depending on the answer, some disease were actually cancelled and then some others would be still kept. The next question, did the patient feel any pain in the chest? And then through series of the questions, then the algorithm, based on the rules, these inference rules, would narrow down to certain disease and judge about what is basically the right diagnosis. That was the rule-based systems, and they created a lot of interest in many domains for knowledge engineering and the creation of these systems for supporting knowledge. But remember, at the end of the day, the aim of these systems is not creating new knowledge, is mainly to support the reusing of the knowledge of the experts. A whole different types of expert systems or intelligent systems these days are based on a very different paradigm, which is not rule-based, rather it is inductive or data-driven. Instead of having the inference rules that are learned and gained from the experts, these systems just statistically go through the data, normally large amount of data, and try to come up with statistical patterns such as classifications, associations, and so forth. And then those patterns, if they are guided properly, can be patterns that can offer interesting results. In the same example of the diagnosis, imagine that instead of having a sort of rule-based Q&A that guides the patients or the junior doctors to the right diagnosis, now these systems are actually looking through the data of many patients, and imagine that they come up with an interesting correlation between having heart attack and the symptoms of, let's say, feeling pain for the last 2 days in the middle part of the chest. And if this statistical association is higher than a certain level and is unique, then this can suggest that the pain in the chest is a good predictor of the heart attack. And this is a whole different paradigm because it's not based on any reasoning, it's not based on necessarily any guided intuition, it's just based on the statistical pattern driven from the data. And that's what we will discuss more in the coming sessions of the course, which is more related to the concept of artificial intelligence in the modern sense. But then these systems are claimed that they create new knowledge, and in a way it is creating some kind of new knowledge. Of course, there are discussions about to what extent the patterns that these systems offer are really knowledge, or they are inputs to be processed and then become knowledge. But at least they are new insights. They are not just the replication of the experts before. And indeed, there are some more advanced systems that they combine these two paradigms in order to come up with new knowledge and insights. And we will discuss these hybrid systems in the second part of the course. And finally, I want to also draw your attention towards another group of knowledge management systems that have been from the very beginning of the knowledge management literature very popular, and still they are very relevant. These are the systems that you would say that they are sort of supporting the organizational memory. They are systems that not only store the pieces of the knowledge, but also they support the connection between these pieces of the knowledge in the organization. A group of them mainly connect the knowledge content. For instance, there are systems that they store many best practices, and actually through certain links or hyperlinks they connect these knowledge elements to each other. Thinking about the Wikipedia, you can think of these kind of systems that if you have an article, within that article there are a lot of cross references to the other articles. There are several limitations to this type of systems that are content centric, and the main limitation is that these systems are effective as much as knowledge can be codified. Since now we know that a lot of knowledge cannot be easily codified, there are other types of systems that are more suitable for connecting not just the knowledge content, rather the knowers, the experts, the people who know something. And these are based on a concept that is called transactive memory. Check out this concept and learn about it. It basically means if there are ways that people in the organization can know who knows what, then this creates a web of connections between people that enables them to find and interact and collaborate with each other. So that's a very effective type of, let's say, knowledge management systems. They are extensively used. There are many forms of them. And one of them that seems to be a very interesting example for this course is the GuruScan, a company that is established by one of the actually university graduates, someone who used the content of knowledge management course and developed this system. And in the guest lecture, I talked with Bart, who shared his insights about how he came up the idea of the GuruScan, what are the functionalities of these systems, and how they help their clients based on this system and the services that they have. So I hope you already got an overview of the different technologies and systems that support different aspects of the knowledge management. Again, this was only an introductory video to both session 5 and the guest lecture, which is session 6. Come to the discussion board on the Canvas, ask your questions, and I hope you enjoyed this part and wish you a very nice time.